The best way to get better is to practice. And in this example, we're just going over the basics of creating some web page content, the stuff that we can actually see. So I gave you about 5 seconds. You can pause this video, download this file from a link in the description, and then follow along with us, or you can try it on your own and then check your answer. All right, so let's get started. We have here a series of to-dos inside of an HTML comment. So I'm just going to come right underneath that. This is actually underneath our body tag. Now, when I hit the enter key, because my comment's always left justified, it moved my cursor there. I hit one tab and it properly indented me for the body. Cool thing about Visual Studio Code. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an H1 tag. So I'm going to put H1 and then I'm going to put page title, as that is what is shown as the content. You notice that the H1, when I close the angle bracket, it put a closing tag and then I put page title. What is inside of page title is going to display in my web page. If I come over here, you can see that I have page title. It shows up kind of large on my screen. The next thing I need to do is create a block of lorem ipsum text inside my paragraph tag. So we've already seen a paragraph tag for our previous example, so that's just P inside my angle brackets. You notice it gives me my closing tag automatically because I'm using Visual Studio Code. Not every editor can do this. Now, if I want to display lorem ipsum text, I need to have some. There's luckily a couple ways that I can do this. In the description, I have a link to a lorem ipsum generator that I've created that you can use, but I have one set up already in Notepad. So here's some lorem ipsum text. I'm going to copy this and then just paste it in between my two paragraph tags. Now, because I have text wrapping on, you notice that it wraps it like such. I go back to my web browser, reload it, and you'll notice I'm only showing one paragraph. Why is that? Well, that's because HTML ignores white space. Once it sees one piece of white space, that's tab, that's a new line character, that's a space, it displays a space and then nothing else. So if we want to have two separate paragraphs, we need to create two separate tags. Go back to Visual Studio Code. I'm going to put a closing paragraph tag and come over here, write the opening tag. Now I do need to delete this closing tag because I have the closing tag highlighted down here. Now you may be looking at ways that this paragraph isn't formatted the same way. Well, HTML doesn't care. This is more for us to make it easier for us. So I'm going to come in here, right click, format document, and Visual Studio Code goes in and formats it. Now, you may not like this formatting because it did some other weird stuff with it. You may go in and fix it. That's up to you. Now I want to go back to my browser, reload this, and now you see I have two paragraphs. Go back to Visual Studio Code, and we'll go ahead and finish writing this. I need my 6 different H tags. My H tags are my heading tags. These are different than my head tag, which we looked at before. So I'm going to have H1, and I'm just going to put in here H1 text. Then I'm going to do H2, and call this H2 text. And you're going to see why we're doing this for each of these different values. Now, in reality, you're going to have typically one H1 text on a page. And that's it. Then you may have several H2 text on a page, several H3, etc. However, in reality, rarely will you have an H4 through H6. This is just not typically needed. Let's go back to our browser and you'll see why. Reload. You see my H1 text is big, H2 text is smaller, H3 text is smaller again, and we keep getting smaller and smaller. Now it's easy to think that this H text or my heading text deals strictly with size. That is not the case. The size is a subset. The reason why we typically only have one H1, a couple H2s, we might have just a few or no H3s, or even more H3s and H2s, is we want to think of it almost like you would an outline for an English paper. So if you're writing a paper, you have your main point, that's your heading 1. And then you have like a capital A. You have a subpoint for it, a capital B, a subpoint for that. You might do numeral 1, numeral 2, and those will kind of give you some information about your most recent subpoint. That's how the headings work. The H1 is, what is my whole page about? H2 is, what is this section about? H3, what is this subsection about? H4 would mean that you have a subsection. H5 is a subsection, etc. That's why we don't typically see H4, H5, and H6. Now, what happens if you want big text without a heading? Because it's not about a section, we're going to show that in a future video for working with your CSS. For now, we're just working on the basics of organizing. To make this be more like a real web page, though, we're going to need to add a header to it. Every website has a header, sometimes called a masthead. We're going to look at that in the next video, which is in the link provided on the screen.